Unpopular opinion. Maybe don't make a comeback. Maybe don't rebrand and reinvent yourself. Maybe do us all a favor and die. Victoria's Secret. After being on absolutely nobody's lips for the past few years, other than being mentioned alongside words such as irrelevant, transphobic, or sketchy, was back in the spotlight a few months ago, following a shocking 3-part documentary expose called Angels and Demons. Commentary Tube rushed to cover the story and give its hot take on the open-ended chapter we were presented with at the end of the documentary. After falling from grace, Victoria's Secret is now desperately trying to reinvent itself. Is it authentic? Are people going to buy into it? Is it going to work? These are all valid questions to ask. However, when we start talking about a rise, fall, and rebrand story arc, I think it's in our best interest as consumers, as human beings living on this planet, to take our questions to the next level. The life cycle of brands, coincidentally, is a lot like the life cycle of human beings. At some point in our journey, you and I will face decline and need to reckon with our little friend called death. When an industry mammoth like Victoria's Secret chooses to reckon with death by means of attempted immortality, reinventing itself instead of ramping down, as consumers, as humans, we need to ask ourselves, at what cost? The Fallen Angels documentary further exposed the relationship between convicted sex offender and trafficker Jeffrey Epstein and the billionaire former owner of Victoria's Secret, Les Wexner. In one of the most gripping scenes of the film, 2 interviewees begin hypothesizing about the nature of the intellectual and ideological bond between Jeffrey Epstein and Les Wexner. The first journalist goes,
"With the story of Lex Wexner and convicted sex offender and trafficker Jeffrey Epstein starts to feel even darker to me is when you start to think about what are the ideas these guys might have shared. What are the beliefs about the world, about humanity? What did they hold in common?"
I've been told that Wexner was so egomaniacal that he commissioned the creation of an artificial intelligence bot, something like IBM's Botson, only called Wexner, to impart his timeless knowledge of marketing and merchandising on the world.
There's also this report that Jeffrey Epstein sought out the leading scientists he could buy access to for his experiment to inseminate dozens of women with his semen in an effort to improve the quality of the human race with his genetic material. The idea to have a legacy that lives on forever, whether it's Epstein's master race or Wexner's AI scheming, all speaks to this very scary, dark, ideological place that our country's ruling class and elites reside in, and the rest of us are not a part of their plan.
This is interesting to me. Historically, it's been reported that some of this so-called ruling class has found itself sympathetic to philosophies that entertain ideas like selective breeding, as we see with eugenics, immortality, as we see with transhumanism, engineered, perfected posthumans, as we see with long-termism. When we hear breeding-obsessed billionaires like Elon Musk expressing concern over low birth rates, because smart people need to begin outpacing the genetic reproduction of idiots, these are ideas that take root in some of these philosophies. Our current draft of capitalism, along with its crowned billionaires that own the corporations that dominate our markets, are all obsessed with growth, because growth apparently leads to innovation. However, it has become clear, to me at least, that they don't believe all sources of growth to be equal. They don't seem interested in evaluating, revisiting the concept of who gets to grow, continue to grow, and Why? Maybe because they feel like that question has already been answered. Their positions of dominance in our society and markets are proof of concept, manifestations of their superiority, because only the cream rises to the top, right? So it's an interesting coincidence, if you will, that this alleged attraction to philosophies that entertain ideas like immortality and the outbreeding of idiots can be mirrored, in Victoria's Secret's case, to the moves the companies these people used to own are making. Funny how a man who, according to the documentary, doesn't really want to die, created a company that in its decline is also now refusing to die. I'm going to say this a lot on my channel. The market is a finite place. There's only so much room, money, and opportunity to go around. There is such a thing as oversaturation. According to the documentary, Victoria's Secret, in its heyday, hogged up more than 40% of the American lingerie market. Currently, the brand is sitting at around 19%. Effectively, Victoria's Secret went from about half the pie to 1/5 of the pie. The point is, there's only one pie. That pie, though, is going to increase significantly in size in the near future. In 2020, the lingerie market was sitting at about $43.2 billion. By 2028, it's expected to nearly double in size, hitting approximately $84.16 billion. That's a lot of potential for a lot of everyday entrepreneurs to even just get one slice of all that projected wealth. But currently, the lingerie market has about 15 key players. That's it. And Victoria's Secret is still one of them. If major brands like Victoria's Secret continue taking the route of rebranding instead of ramping down when faced with their inevitable decline, all that opportunity and all that potential is just going to end up in the same hands. At some point, someone somewhere needs to give it the up. Give it up. Give up your toys. Give up the wealth. Share the cost then to the consumer, at least, when a rebrand is the chosen chapter in a brand's story arc, is another option, a potentially better option. And the cost of that is the very thing capitalism's unquenchable thirst for growth is trying to achieve, and that is innovation. When a dinosaur hogs up all of the space and all of the wealth, that means other people, potentially more innovative people, can't get into the ring. The ring is so unattainable to them, and it's so far away that they can't even smell it. So the question is then, is Victoria's Secret really the best we can do as a species? You know? Are they the pinnacle of innovation in their field at this point, thereby potentially justifying their market share? Or are they just taking up space? Is the world better off with Victoria's Secret in it? Or would the world be better off as a result of the space and room for new players that would be created as a result of Victoria's Secret gracefully bowing out of the game? Seth Godin is a prolific marketer. In one of his popular books called The Dip, he makes the case for quitting. The marker of a great entrepreneur, he posits, is, in his opinion, not only knowing what to launch, when to pivot, when to grow. It's also knowing when it's time to call it a day and move on with your life. Because the energy and time you're spending on a venture that may not lead anyone anywhere better is actually what's standing in the way of you coming up with something better, being better. But I guess that's exactly the point of my video. When our world's supposed best and brightest partake in death defying schemes, refuse to let go, and share their toys, what they are actually doing is not giving us as consumers an opportunity to know if they are really the best we can do. Most importantly, they are not giving themselves an honest opportunity to know if they are the best we can do. But maybe that's their point. Billionaires often build their entire personas and identities around the idea that they are supposed geniuses in their fields. And so the prospect of having to reckon with the reality that if, relatively speaking, we evened out the playing field, even just a bit, they may not actually be so special after all, might just be something many of them and the corporate entities they run are willing to go to great immortal lengths to avoid at everybody else's detriment, including themselves.